All right, let's talk history. You've probably heard of the great emperors, Ashoka, Shivaji Maharaj. But what if I told you about an 18th century Indian king who did something almost unbelievable? A king who went head-to-head with a global superpower and won. Today, we're getting into the incredible and complicated story of Marthanda Varma.
And this quote, right here, really says it all. I mean, think about that claim for a second. It's huge, because we're not just talking about winning a skirmish, we're talking about a victory that completely changed the course of colonialism in India. He literally stopped an empire in its tracks.
And to really get why this was so incredible, you have to look at the matchup. It's almost comical. On one side, you've got his kingdom of Travancore, tiny, politically broken, and completely broke. On the other side, the Dutch East India Company. This wasn't just some trading firm, it was a global military and economic juggernaut. They had the best weapons, a massive army, and basically controlled the entire world's spice trade. This was the ultimate David versus Goliath story.
So, the big question is, how on earth did he pull it off? Well, to understand the man, we've got to start with his single greatest moment, the battle that sent shockwaves all the way back to Europe.
This is it, the Battle of Colachel. And it wasn't just a victory, it was a complete rout, an absolute humiliation for the Dutch. Varma's army used these brilliant, unconventional tactics. They even got local fishermen to sneak out at night and sabotage the Dutch ships. The European forces were surrounded, outsmarted, and totally crushed.
And you really can't overstate the impact of this. This one battle completely shattered Dutch dreams of colonizing India. They basically packed up and left, which created this huge power vacuum that, the British eventually filled. Some historians even argue this is why English, not Dutch, became the colonial language. It reshaped everything. So who was the man who made it happen?
Well, to get that, we need to go back in time. Because Marthanda Varma wasn't born into some glorious, stable kingdom. He was born a fugitive, with a target on his back from day one. His entire childhood was spent on the run. Powerful nobles who really controlled the kingdom wanted him dead. And the stories are wild. He'd hide for days inside hollow trees. You can still see one of them today. He disguised himself as a poor villager just to survive. And the crazy part is, it was the common people who protected him. They risked everything for their future king. So when he finally takes the throne at just 23, he doesn't inherit a kingdom. He inherits a mess.
And this was his biggest problem, the Ettuveetil Pillamar, or the 8 houses. You gotta understand, these guys weren't just advisors. They were the ones with the real power. They controlled all the money, all the land, the temples, everything. The king was just a figurehead, a rubber stamp. Marthanda Varma knew that if he was going to actually rule, he had to break them completely.
And this is where the story gets really dark and really controversial. He didn't just outsmart his enemies, he annihilated them. This is where the debate about whether he was a hero or a villain really heats up. His spies uncovered yet another plot to kill him, this time at a big temple festival. He let them spring their trap and then he sprung his. He moved with chilling speed. He rounded up all 42 leaders from the noble houses and their allies. The trial was quick, the sentence was death by hanging. But he didn't stop there. He went after their entire bloodline. The women were exiled, the male children were executed, and every last bit of their land and wealth was seized by the state. It was brutal, systematic, and absolute.
So, how do modern scholars see this? Well, they're pretty divided. Was he a ruthless monster, or was this a horrific but maybe necessary act of survival? This quote really nails the dilemma. For Varma, it was a simple, brutal choice. Live in constant fear of the next assassination attempt, or eliminate the threat permanently. He chose to eliminate the threat, and the price of that choice was a river of blood.
But once his enemies were gone, a different side of Marthanda Varma emerged. This is where we see the ruthless warrior transform into a genius nation builder. He wasn't just about conquering, he was about building something that would last. First thing he did, he built a professional army, 50,000 strong. Now this was a total game changer. Before, the king had to rely on the armies of the nobles, the same guys who kept trying to kill him. This new army was loyal to one man, and one man only, the king. It completely shattered the old feudal power structure.
And he used that same logic for everything else. He created a central government that answered only to him. He seized control of the incredibly valuable pepper trade, making it a state monopoly that poured money into his treasury. And he used that money to build roads, canals, massive irrigation projects that supercharged agriculture. He was literally building a modern state from scratch.
But maybe his real genius was his eye for talent. I mean, look at this. On the left, Ramayan Dalavoy. Varma saw how smart this guy was when he was just a servant and promoted him all the way up to prime minister. But the guy on the right, that's the really wild story. That's Eustachius de Lannoy. He was the Dutch commander Varma captured at Colachel. Instead of imprisoning or executing him, Varma saw his military genius and made him the general of his new modern army. He didn't care where you came from, only what you could do.
So, you've got this picture of a ruthless conqueror on one hand and a brilliant builder on the other. But there's one last piece to the puzzle of Marthanda Varma, a move that blended political genius with what seems to be genuine faith.
In 1750, right at the peak of his power, he does something no one saw coming. He performs this ceremony, the Thrippadadanam. He publicly and formally donates his entire kingdom to the state god Sri Padmanabha. He declared that from that moment on, he wasn't a king anymore. He was now Padmanabha Dasa, the servant of the god, just ruling on his behalf.
So is this just a profound act of faith? You know, he was a very religious man, so maybe. But it was also an act of pure political genius. Think about it. How can you rebel against the king now? If you fight Marthanda Varma, you're not just fighting a man anymore. You're fighting a god. It was the ultimate political checkmate. It instantly unified all these territories he'd conquered under a single divine authority.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Let's boil down Marthanda Varma to 5 key points. 1. He took a broken, chaotic region and forged it into the powerful kingdom of Travancore. 2. He's the only Indian ruler who can claim a decisive, game-changing victory over a European colonial power. 3. He was an incredible reformer who built a modern state. 4. He got there by being absolutely ruthless. And 5. He secured it all by brilliantly mixing politics and religion.
Which leaves us with the big question. Was he a nation builder or a ruthless tyrant, a hero or a villain? The truth is, he was probably both. And his story really makes you wonder, in a world filled with chaos and violence, what's the real cost of creating order? What's the true price of building a kingdom that lasts? That's the powerful and troubling legacy of Marthanda Varma.